Okay, hello and welcome to our weekly Wednesday night live stream. I am your host, Dana Morningstar, and this is a live stream that I try and do every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it normally runs for about 3 hours. So if that's something that you're interested in, please make sure to subscribe to my channel or check out my website where you can be notified of whenever I go live. My website is also thriveafterabuse.com. And what else is there? Oh, book club. Book club is tomorrow night, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here on YouTube. And we are going to be discussing the book Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. It's a really deep, powerful story, true story of a psychiatrist who lived through not one, but I think four different concentration camps, and um, kind of his struggle to find meaning and to move forward after such a horrific roller coaster of events. That's putting it mildly, but just such a horrific time. So let's see. Welcome, everybody. Donna, Changing My Life, Julia, Rand Lion, Crystal Mountain, Elizabeth, Val, Jack, Benjamin, Nicole. Welcome, welcome, everybody. Awesome job, Nicole. She says, going on almost 3 months, no contact. I never thought I could do it. Very, very cool. What what do you think helped? What were some of your strategies during this, or kind of any aha moments that you'd be comfortable sharing with other people that might also be struggling with going no contact? Montana is here. Anne is here. Blue Moon. Melissa from Australia. Welcome. How have you guys been doing? Colleen says, "Hi, missed ya." Well, thanks, Colleen. It's good to be here. Lawrence says, "Hello from the Philippines." Oh my goodness, that's far away from here. It's so cool. All these people from all over the world. How is everybody doing with coronavirus and these changes in the world and changes in life, big time changes in life, changes in the way we do things? Mr. Perfect makes the comment that Mr. Perfect was a wrestler. Yes, he was. That I remember him. That was super old school, like 80s wrestler, if I remember correctly. Let's see. Okay, so Nicole responded about some of the things that worked for her with staying no contact. She says, I focused on myself and just started living my best life for me. I wrote a list of things I put off doing, and I'm currently checking off things on my bucket list. I love it. I love it. Very cool. That's a great way to funnel uh, that energy and to fill this void, which are, the ending of a relationship, it always creates this void. And it helps when we fill it up with something positive and nourishing. Uh, you know, so that's wonderful that you're doing that. Let's see. Donna says, I'm so happy I live on my own during COVID, just me and my pooch. Jennifer, hello. It says, oh, look, the painting is back. Yes. Yes, it is. I didn't have room. I just set all this up downstairs. We will see how well this works. I might be moving it further that way in the near future. We'll see. Let's see. Val says, for me, it was when I changed from emotional abuse. Oh, is it when it changed from emotional abuse to physical abuse? That was when she was able to realize, I've got to get out of here. And then she left immediately. Good for you. That's the longer a person is abused emotionally, the I think the more difficult it tends to be for them to leave. So the fact that you were able to summon that strength to do that once it turned physical, I think is wonderful. And I think we're all just thrilled that you were able to get out safely. Oh, well, thank you, Lawrence. He says your channel and many others really help us to go through to the other side. It's not easy, but I take it one day at a time. I think that's a really great approach to chunk it down into one day at a time, sometimes 1 hour at a time, or even 1 minute at a time. It's moving forward towards, I think, towards what we know to be healthy for us, and it makes a huge difference. Oh, that's fun. Alicia says, I've been stepping outside of my comfort zone with my hair. I've been trying new styles. I dyed it. It's so nice to have a change, just new hair, new me. I think I'll try makeup next. Haha. Yeah, that sounds like fun. I have been tempted to change up my hair as well. And I don't know why I never thought of this before, but and I obviously I can't do this now with COVID things, but it seems like maybe a good way to do it is just to go to a wig shop and to try on different hair colors and different lengths and all of that. Because I'm always afraid, the longer my hair gets, and my hair is pretty long, the longer my hair gets, the harder it is for me to cut it because it just becomes kind of this safety thing. Plus, I have really, um, I don't even know, curly makes it sound like it's somewhat manageable. My hair isn't. So it's just kind of a mess if I leave it natural. And so the shorter it is, the more unmanageable it is. And yeah, so it's scary to the thought of cutting it or coloring it. So I don't know. Oh, Sebastian, hey, welcome. He says, today I am 34 years old. Well, happy flippin' birthday, man. We are really glad you're here. How are you doing? How is life on your side of the world? Well, thank you so much, Julia. She says, thank you, Dana. I've watched you for 3 years every week, and my life is 180 degrees for the better. There is a kernel of knowledge every week. Oh, well, that means the world to me. Thank you so much. Jennifer says, I've learned to cut my bangs pretty much like a pro, but when it comes to the length, I'm terrified because I can't see the back. Yeah, it's a little dicey when you start cutting your own hair. I can relate to that. Okay, let's see. PM says, what helped me the most with going no contact was remembering all of the bad and harmful things about the relationship and how that made me feel. I'm a big fan of that technique, writing it down and reviewing it when kind of those nostalgia is pulling at us. And if there's any temptation, we're bored, we're lonely, we're kind of momentary lapses of sanity, I guess, where we think, well, maybe it wasn't that bad. Maybe I could make this work, to go back and pick up that list and be like, oh, that's right. That's why I can't do that anymore. Like, it's a no go. It really helps to snap us out of, reopening that door. Oh, very cool. Nicole says she also planned a few trips and reconnected with old friends and now has a great support system. Go, Nicole, go. I am so thrilled that you're just running full speed into this next chapter in your life. Good for you. I really hope, for so many people, relationships like this, they're so profoundly devastating and painful, and they just can cause damage across the board, financially and physically and emotionally and psychologically and all of this. But on the flip side of that it can really shake a lot of people out of like kind of their comfort zone and make them start questioning so many things to where they just are doing what you're doing. They're like, you know what? I'm going to go full speed into these things that are nourishing for me, things I've put off. Like, I need to have positivity and things to look forward to and good things in my life. I've shared before, my brother, this was years ago, was in a relationship with a woman who had cheated on him multiple times. And it just really shook him up big time. And that's putting it mildly. It just really, it was like a bomb went off in his life. And um, he had wanted to be a personal trainer for I mean, he was born to be a personal trainer. Really. This was the kind of kid he would put up pictures of Arnold Schwarzenegger back from his bodybuilding days. His bedroom was full of, and he would write these workout routines for himself. And here's this little kid, who's probably 8 years old, who's just obsessed with uh, physical fitness. And and it probably was because he was a little kid, but he's not a little kid anymore. He's super buff. Well, anyways, he kept hearing how hard it was to be a personal trainer and, oh, you're never going to make any money, and it's really difficult to get clients and to keep clients, and it's just too unpredictable, don't even try. And so he didn't. For a long time he was unintentionally letting other people talk him out of it. And these people, of course, thought that they had his best interest in mind. Oh, we're keeping him safe. Uh, this is not a good plan for him to move forward on. And so after this relationship, he just was feeling so destroyed. He just thought, well, basically nothing in my life is working right now. So why not? I might as well go for my dream of doing this. And if I fail, then, well, it's just going to be, another failure and kind of a long line of things that aren't working. And it's so great that he went that direction. Well, anyway, so he took, practice, he's took the exam, he passed it, and now he's a very successful trainer and he loves what he does. So sometimes these relationships can really be the catalyst for massive amounts of growth in our life that we might not have had any other way, because we were in a comfort zone, or we felt like we had too much to lose, or the timing wasn't right, or what have you. Oh boy, Donna says, yeah, my ex just sent me a Hoover email last week. I just hit delete. He must be bored. Yep. Good for you. Good job with staying strong. Crystal Mountain says, Dana, are you able to speak more about how a narcissist can be both a narcissist and a codependent at the same time? Sure. This is kind of, I think, where terminology and definitions can get really muddy. And so let me explain this to you from my point of view, which hopefully will help. I don't know. But to me, I look at it more of, I think, like, first and foremost, there's a difference between being codependent and being dependent. And all too often these terms are used as being interchangeable. There is some overlap between them. I mean, there's a lot of codependent people that are dependent upon other people, but there's lots of dependent people that aren't codependent. And this is a distinction that I feel is very significant. And like I said, it's not made often enough, in my opinion. So dependent is the, I need you, right? I need you. Generally, I need you to take care of me. I'm relying on you. Whereas codependent is more of, or I should say, dependent is, I need you to meet my needs. And it's very one sided. Codependent is more of a, uh, I need you, I need you to need me. So it's codependent people, oftentimes there is that dependency where they struggle with chronically feeling like they need to be in a relationship kind of a thing, but sometimes they aren't. They can be fiercely independent. They have their own job, their own friends, their own hobbies, their own money. They're doing their own thing. um, but the way that they kind of, how would you put this? The way that they operate in relationships is more of, I need I need you to need me. So there's that attraction to people that need them. So they're more comfortable in that rescuer role, whereas a person that's dependent is more comfortable in that I need to be rescued role. So if you think about it in terms of that, with narcissists, I don't think that there is any codependence there, because it by and large, because it tends to be, they're not looking for people. Their mentality is not, I need you to need me. It's more of, I just need you. It's a one-way street. It's constantly, I need. And then they take. Now you could, I mean, sure, I guess. You could have some that are more on the, somewhere along that spectrum of, I need you, I need you to need me. So they're looking for people to rescue, but it still comes across as very, I guess, one-sided. Uh, I yeah, I'm trying to even think of an example like that, where they might like to feel like feeling like they're the rescuer. Okay, yeah, sorry. This is the first time I've ever articulated this thought out loud, so I apologize for this. Um, I guess if they're thinking, "I need you to need me," it's that feeling of, I need to be a rescuer, but as soon as I feel like other people don't need to be rescued, then I'm out. Whereas with a person that's, I think, truly more codependent, it's it's not such a s you know, energy suck in that sense. It's more of a, I need you to need me. I'm gonna make myself useful and helpful. I might still try to rescue, right? As a codependent person, I might still try to rescue and do all of these things to feel needed, but, um, it's not throwing the other person, it's not kinda sucking them dry and then throwing them away, if that makes sense. I don't know. I'll be curious to see. I'll have to think about that some more. I'll be curious to know what you guys think the differences are and how you would kind of classify. Okay, let's see. Uh, Let me scroll up here. Sean asks, can you discuss a female covert narcissist? Well, okay, so the main difference between like covert and overt, right? Covert is behavior that's more hidden, or just something in general that's more hidden, whereas overt is something that's more outright. And when we're talking about a narcissist, if you kind of back it up a little bit, and we're looking more at, I think it helps to separate, kind of to look at a person's behavior, instead of being like, okay, let's talk about a narcissist, because then people, I just have found this time and again, people get caught up in, well, are they or aren't they a narcissist? Like it's binary, either they are or they aren't. And personality stuff is not that cut and dry. So if you back it up to looking at narcissistic behavior, examining what is that, it tends to be very to an extreme, and we're all on the spectrum of kind of self-orientation, where you have, or you could say I like to look at it, I guess, in terms of a spectrum of self-orientation from, you have what's known as a healthy degree of narcissism, and that's having that the self-esteem and the self-value, where you're like, "Yeah, sure, why not me? Why not now?" It's what gets us out of the bed in the morning. It's what helps us to think, to to plan goals, to think that we have the ability to achieve them, to think that we have worth and value. That healthy degree of narcissism is healthy. Past that is when it starts getting problematic. So then it starts getting down the line of, instead of, well, why not me? Uh, it it starts moving towards, it's all about me. And then, which, that's exhausting and draining. But then it moves to, it's all about me at the expense of you. And then it's all about me at the destruction of you. That's further down the line. That's when you see like really extreme behavior where it's just jaw dropping, the level of damage a person can do. Men and women, I should say, let me back it up. Manipulative people in general are going to use whatever tools they have at the time. It's just part of the way that they see the world. You have, and so gender can play into it, age plays into it, religion, social position, social economic status, all of these things play into it. So um, a woman might be more inclined, and it's going to vary from individual to individual, right? But a woman might be more inclined to um, kind of maybe sexually manipulate more so than men, more so than a man. But not always. There's a lot of men out there that use sex as a weapon. And there's a lot of men out there that intentionally get women pregnant and try to trap them. There's into paying child support or into thinking, well, if I get her pregnant, then she won't leave, kind of a thing. And she's my meal ticket kind of a thing. It goes both ways. Um, so it's not, so anyways, everybody manipulates differently. So it's more about seeing the behavior for what it is than trying to suss out, okay, well, what exactly is a female covert narcissist? Because their behavior is going to wildly vary from person to person. And it's more important that you see problematic behavior for what it is as a whole and not get caught up in like the gender, the age, the nationality, the profession, do you see what I'm saying? Does that help? I hope that helps. Uh, Kamami is saying with the COVID virus, we might be free here in a 1 week in France, but not every state. It'll just depend on the contagion. And yes, that's how it is here in Michigan. I think, well, we're in lockdown until May 15th, but we'll see. Okay, let me scroll up here. Sebastian says, "Thank you, Dana. I was working. Now I'm going to bed because it's 2:50 in the morning. I'm feeling strange today, thinking 1 year ago I was with that narcissistic psycho girl who did a lobotomy to my brain and then abandoned me." Yes, I know you've really had a rough past year. I really hope, Sebastian, that this next year is your best year yet. And I'm just, I I think about you all the time. I just want to let you know I do. I worry about you. I know, and I love all of you guys. I do worry about all of you, but um Sebastian, I know you've been in some really low places over the past year, and I just want you to know there's people out here. I think everybody in the chat has talked about you, expressed concern. Um, there's been times when you haven't been here, just hoping that everything's okay. So please know that you are important and that there's lots of people around the world that are just sending uh, kind of good wishes your way. Elizabeth. It says, I had to assume that one can't grow empathy as an adult the same way one can't earn inches of height after a certain age. Yes, there's, I think it's definitely challenging the older a person gets that because that's kind of a skill where that really um, it needs a healthy degree of attachment early on in life. It requires validation. It requires what's known as attunement to kind of a primary caregiver. So there's kind of that validation or and that attunement. It's that reflective um, ability where you have a caregiver who is in sync with that that infant or that small child's emotions and their wants and their needs. So they're reading the child's emotional climate effectively. And if that doesn't develop, then there's so many just profound consequences that happen from that. So if a child doesn't get that, then part of what happens is the child is so out, then they become out of sync with their own wants and needs, and they don't know who they are. So in a way, they lack empathy for themselves, and they replace all of that, uh, those types of feelings with anger, with hurt, with defiance. Uh, they kind of learn these emotions aren't safe, and they don't have the capacity to kind of care about other people because they haven't ever really learned to care for themselves. So as they get older, and most, it's just it's just so difficult. Attachment disorder stuff is so difficult. I think in general, even with the best therapy out there, it's still it's a nature and nurture kind of thing, and it can just be a crapshoot as to whether or not um, you know that that bend in that child's personality can be corrected. So as an adult, trying to when this person's already had this long-standing pattern of shutting down that part of themselves where they don't have empathy for other people, they don't have empathy for themselves. They've they've supplemented that um, with a lot of fortressing, really. It's well, I feel rejected, so instead I'm going to reject you before you have the ability to hurt me anymore. And of course, this isn't conscious. This isn't a conscious thought that a person has. This is just what can happen if a person's hurt deep enough or repeatedly enough. So getting um, building empathy, especially later on in life, is just very, very, very difficult. And but I would say by and large, it starts with them developing empathy for themselves. So actually getting in tune with those emotions of sadness, grief, loss. We had this conversation. I don't know if it was last week or week before about kind of the concept of a pity party versus grieving. And Pete Walker, I read a comment of his once, and it just really resonated with me, where he was saying, I think a pity party is a really good first step in healing. And I could not agree more with him. That's It's so frowned upon by society, right? Oh, a pity party. Oh, you're being immature. Oh, this is negative. This isn't appropriate. You need to handle things like an adult, right? There's all these messages that when we use the term pity party that are conjured up. But if you think about that first step of getting in touch with your emotions and being like, man, that's not right. It's not fair. And you start getting upset about it and you start moping around and you're like, oh, kind of woe to be me kind of a thing. That's what that looks like. That first step of getting in tune with those feelings. For many people, they've never allowed themselves to do that because especially as a child, they might not have ever been given that room. Oh, what are you crying for? I'll give you something to cry about. Oh, you should be so lucky. Oh, I can't. You feel abused. Oh, poor you. You have it easy. I had it so much worse. right? So there's all kinds of disempowering and invalidating messages that kids tend to get, even from parents that might be well intended, but they just don't understand the child's perspective. So, yeah. So for a person to develop empathy, I would agree with Pete on that, with having getting in tune with our own emotions before we can then start understanding the emotions of others. Okay, let me scroll up. Susanna asks, can someone turn on and off empathy? Yes. Yes, we all can, and we all do. It's mm, I think it depends on the kind of the reasons uh behind it, you know? So, hold on just a second here. So for example, okay, like on a larger level, you had let's say slave owners, right? They might have been very loving parents. They might have been wonderful with their kids, had wonderful, deep, nourishing relationships to with their friends and family and so on. But they owned other human beings, and the vast just that in itself, I fully believe is an act of violence. But many of them, you're slaves. You have slaves. You're making them work and work for you for free and selling their children a lot of the time. I mean, doing horrific things. So yeah, people are we talk about narcissists having the ability to compartmentalize, but realizing this is a human thing that we all can do, and a lot of us do in general. So people that tend, let's say, for example, veterinarians or people that are in healthcare fields or social workers, oh my goodness, especially where you're dealing day in and day out with pain and suffering. And it's, you can't, you can't have, you need a certain degree of empathy, but you also need to be able to do your job. So you can't crumble at the seams every single time that there's something that horrific happens. If you're a veterinarian, you find out this animal has to be put down, or you're a social worker, and or if you work for child protective services, and it's constant, uh, horrific story after horrific story. You've got to be able to have that professional. That's what's known as professional distance, so you can kind of put that in its own container. You leave work at work to where it doesn't spill over and it becomes completely debilitating for you. That's difficult to do. And this is why certain jobs for a lot of people, the burnout rate is so high because they have a hard time. I mean, normal human beings, we can only handle so much. And it's there are always going to be those cases that stick with you, whether or situations that stick with you that it's really hard to move forward and you'll just remember them for the rest of your life. So I think the big takeaway with that, with realizing that empathy can be compartmentalized, is for us to realize that we are all capable of potentially doing great harm. This book that we're going to be discussing tomorrow for book club, Man's Search for Meaning, with Viktor Frankl, and he was a psychiatrist who survived, I want to say, 4 different concentration camps. It's so easy to look at these moments in time with Hitler or with slave owners or kind of these great atrocities, and to think, oh well, Hitler was just evil. Well, these slave owners, they were just evil. And to think, well, that's not me, right? That would never be me. That's them. I could never be a Nazi. How on earth? That those people, they were just all evil. And that is the kind of thinking that is why history tends to keep repeating itself, is because nobody thinks that they could be roped into such a horrific ideology, or that they could do such crimes against humanity. So realizing that we're all deep down potentially capable of this, so we can be aware of it if it starts to stir inside of us. And the common themes between the Holocaust and slavery, it's the dehumanization of other people. It's not seeing them as people, right? And especially with the Holocaust, it was more of a scapegoat. It's easy. Oh, we're going to put all of our problems on different groups of people. Jewish people, handicapped people, you know, this is what's holding us back as a people. We just need to exterminate all of these people, and then we'll be, you know, we'll flourish, kind of a thing. That's concerning, and that's that mindset that we all need to really watch out for. Okay. Right, that's a good point. Missouri Cowboy says, Hitler loved animals. And if you've ever watched uh, these different kind of crime shows, this is what you'll see time and again, or people, and I feel so bad for the families of different serial killers, or people, that have just quote unquote just murdered one person, where their families try still decades later trying to piece together what happened, what signs did they miss. And they're like, gosh, this person seemed like a really great guy or gal, and they were active, they were a great parent, they um, you know, did all these things. But Bill Cosby, I think, is a great example of that, where, oh, he did so many good things. He knew the difference between good and bad. He wrote books about the difference between good and bad, about how to have a happy, healthy marriage, how to raise happy, healthy, well-adjusted kids. He spoke extensively about it. He uh, was a huge advocate for like clean comedy. And I mean, and then here he was living this very double life. And it's hard for everybody, I think, to reconcile that. Like, how can you have these two very different sides of a person? How does that happen? And how do they not? Right. Crystal says another example is the BTK killer and his daughter. Yep, absolutely. Let's see. Let me scroll up here. Oh, good. Jennifer says, I took a personal day off work tomorrow, so I'll be able to make it to book club for once. Yay. We're going to be so glad to have you. This conversation tomorrow is going to be interesting. I have spent so much time uh, just doing a deep dive on this book and the different concepts behind this book, and kind of different, kind of the importance of this book in terms of uh, kind of the history or the development of psychology. You got time with the virus. It's easy to do a deep dive, but it's been a really interesting journey. I've learned a lot. Thank goodness for the internet, huh? Okay, Huffle Mom. Let's see, scrolling up. She said she posted. Oh, well, congratulations. She says, I think I have some good news to share. Last week, my final altar reintegrated. I haven't been this complete since I was very small. I wanted to share the joy. Could you speak more, if you're comfortable, obviously no pressure, if you're comfortable sharing a little bit more about what that completion process was like for you. And um, yeah, I would be curious to know kind of what worked. And I know you tried a lot of things over the years, kind of what didn't work. Let's see. Let me scroll up here. Slavic Princess says, oh, thank you. She said, your incredibly thought provoking answers compelled me to create at least several aha moments ever since you answered my question a few weeks ago. Very, very cool. And both of you, Slavic Princess and Jennifer, I do need to get back to you. This is the final week of classes and everything. I'm wrapping everything up. So I I am I just am so sorry. It's just been seriously nonstop. But I haven't forgotten, and I am very much looking forward to speaking with both of you. Fatima says, sounds like her parents have taken away her laptop and she has 1 week left to turn schoolwork in. She's going to fail because of them. Fatima, can you email your, I would imagine your university has a website that you'd be able to access. Do you have a smartphone? Um, that you'd be able to access via smartphone. I would encourage you to contact, email your professors. Most classes, at a minimum, you can take an incomplete in them, and then you'll be able to make up that incomplete. So I would keep communication open with your professors and let them know to whatever degree you're comfortable with that kind of, you know, extenuating circumstances, you won't be able to turn in this final assignment. Could you please potentially take an incomplete in the class and get them the work as soon as possible? Okay, Helpful Mom says, well, it basically came down to helping her alter, reassuring her, and just waiting for her to be ready. My experience with it says that it happens when it happens. That's that, that makes a lot of sense, right? Just providing that safety and stability. Are you, do you feel different? Or I guess in what ways do you feel different or more integrated? Alicia says, I've been trying to get through the Whole Again book by Jackson Mackenzie. It's an amazing book so far, but my attention span is all of 2 seconds long at this point. I feel like I need to keep moving in order to feel okay. So I just want to validate that, Alicia. Uh, that is very much part of a trauma response. And one of the biggest things I think most of us that have gone through um, narcissistic abuse or trauma in general have had is that it's the difficulty concentrating, and it's the which can be almost absolutely maddening. Like, what is wrong with me? I used to joke back when I was going through everything that I felt like I had mashed potatoes for brains. Like I was making, I couldn't make like a linear plan for my day that made any sense. Like, for example, I would be, I don't know, in the middle of summer, so really hot. And normally, if I had errands to do, like the last errand would be to go to the grocery store. But I would go to the grocery. I just what I wasn't. thinking. I wasn't able to plan ahead. And so I would kind of do things on this list based off of what popped into my mind first or what was kind of pulling at me. So I'd go to the grocery store, but then I'd have, all this stuff in a hot car for the next 2 hours. It just was beyond frustrating. I'm like, man, I just feels like everything now I'm climbing uphill through knee deep mud. And it didn't used to be this way. And there were many times where I would have to ask other people, mainly my mom, to kind of check my thought process. Like, this is what I'm thinking. Does this sound like a good idea? Does this sound reasonable? Because at that point, I was so uh, just flustered and was having all kinds of ideas. Oh, I should, uh, I mean, I was thinking for a while, "Oh, okay, I'm gonna make pottery, and then I'm just gonna go on the road and go to all these different art fairs, and like that's what I'm gonna do." I mean, I was just all over the place, all over the place. So I think a lot of people can relate to that. So my encouragement to you is to realize that that's normal, that level of feeling scattered and having trouble concentrating. And I think we were talking about this last week, kind of the difference when you have the physical flu, we realize, okay, physically we're different than we were the week before we had the flu, right? Your lung capacity is different, your energy level is different, your temperature is different, um, your level of motivation is very different. If you can take a shower, that's a success, right? It's the same thing when we go through traumatic times where we're different. But because this isn't a subject that's trauma in general, isn't something that's openly discussed, nobody knows what's normal about it or how to handle it. And so we push ourselves. Well, I just need to suck it up and I just need to do this and do that. And we expect ourselves to be the exactly how we were before this happened. And that doesn't that doesn't work. And then we get frustrated. Maybe then we think, "Oh, I'm just lazy." That's what it is. I'm just being lazy or I'm being self-indulgent or I'm having a pity party. And we can really start to get hard on ourselves and not realizing, nope, there's just some brain changes that happen after trauma when your brain, especially when you go through something that doesn't make sense, such as a manipulative relationship. It's going to take, when there's deceit involved, your brain is working overtime trying to understand, taking the pieces apart, putting them back together again to see, now does the puzzle make sense? Okay, no, it doesn't. The brain takes the pieces apart, puts it back together again. Now does it make sense? Nope. Over and over and over and over and over again. And it's exhausting and it's mentally draining and it's kind of taken up all of, you know, kind of the bandwidth, really. Let's see here. Fatima says, I just want to walk out of this house and never come back. I don't care about money. I'm just so tired of suffering here. Well, I, I don't blame you, Fatima. And I think everybody here that's familiar with your story understands, uh, just how difficult things have been for you. Can we help you to kind of come up with a list of options? Not saying that you have to act on any of them. This is 100% up to you. But sometimes I think it can help just to brainstorm some options as to, okay, if you were to leave or if you were to do something different, what are some things that you could potentially do and go from there? I know we had talked about last week, uh, the kind of coming up with a list of, okay, these are some challenges with, being independent, being on your own. This is something that I think every uh, every young adult struggles with, and some people struggle with it for significantly longer than others, and that's okay. It is what it is. And but if we can get clear on, okay, this is where the challenges are, this is where the struggles are, these are where your questions are, then we can start working towards helping you to address those and then give you support as you move forward. Oh, that's a beautiful way to say that. Huffle Mom says, it's best to not force it with the integration of kind of these fragmented parts of her personality. She says, I feel more complete. It was like two bubbles joining in one. It was an experience of complete joy. It just feels like poetry to me. That is really profound. Let's see. Jennifer was asking about alters. Jack was saying yes, this referring to dissociative identity disorder. And yeah, and Jack said Angie and I did a video on this yesterday. We did. We both spoke at length on dissociative identity disorder. That I don't know. I don't normally go to her channel to read comments on. I don't normally read a lot of comments anyhow because uh they can really be savage, and that can um I have to make sure I'm in a good place where that's not going to kind of kick out the chair from underneath me, kind of a thing. So I was saying on Angie's channel, my experience when I was a psychiatric nurse with, well, this is before it was known as DID, but multiple personality, was I had never seen what I believe to be a compelling case. I had only come across people that um, I felt were acting, and not just me, the treatment team generally felt like they were acting the part. There was some sort of secondary gain there. And I was trying to make it clear, and um, about I'm I'm open to the possibility of that. I would definitely, I really do value and enjoy the insight that both Huffle Mom and Jack have. And I know that this is something that Huffle Mom has been experiencing for a long time. Um, and I would be curious to learn more about it and, you know, to kind of see, because I definitely absolutely feel this whole fragmentation that occurs within a person is a very common, and I would say almost expected response from trauma. So I definitely don't want to minimize or negate anybody's experience with that. Um, I just was saying from my own personal experience, from what I've seen, when it's been extreme to that, extreme fragmentation to the point of full on different personalities, I haven't seen anything that I would say that has been compelling. But that's not to say that that doesn't exist and that's, not potentially out there. And the reason I bring that up too, Huffle Mom, is because I definitely don't want to minimize or negate your experience, or for you to feel, if you were to go watch that video that Angie and I did yesterday, that you would feel, um, betrayed or minimized or invalidated. So I just wanted to have full transparency with that. That's why I was mentioning it. Okay, let's see here. Oh, Montana is ambitious. And Montana says, I'm in the middle of moving and I've never done any sort of book club, anything before, but I believe I saw the book club YouTube or somewhere free to listen. It's free to listen and I can start, but how do book clubs work? Should I try and find and start listening? So, how our book club works, and this might be changing here in in the near future, but it won't be changing tomorrow because I just don't have any time. But uh, so I have a list on my website. If you go to thriveafterabuse.com, I finally got a list up. Yay, yay me. Under That's under the read tab, and you can see it'll say book club. So that's a list of all of the books that we're going to be reading for the rest of the year. And the book that we're going to be discussing tomorrow, Man's Search for Meaning, this is a very old book. I think it was first published in the 40s, maybe. Um, Maybe a little bit later than that. It's been around for quite a bit. A lot of these books, if you contact your local library, or you generally contact your local library, they'll have them in ebook format, or they'll have them on audiobook format that you can rent from them for free. So that's definitely a wonderful resource or option to consider. And then we discuss the book, and I'm trying to get book club into like a more organized format where there's kind of um, 7 to 10 takeaways from the book that we discuss, and then potential how it kind of relates to our community, and then potential um, objections or concerns a person might have, kind of as the book pertains to our community. And that book club is the last Thursday of every month, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Fatima says, "What would happen if I call the cops or go to a shelter? Would they make me go back if I have no evidence I'm being abused?" No. So you don't generally, I mean, I've never encountered anything where a person actually needs physical evidence of abuse, but I would call your local shelter, uh, or at least a couple. I don't know where you live, how big of a city you live in. Contact, um, one or more shelters, and I would talk to an advocate that answers the phone and say, "This is your situation. Um, you live at home. There's a lot of," explain the different types of abuse that are going on. That you're 18, and or that you're over 18, and that you wanted to see, do they have room in the shelter? Most shelters, uh, will they'll kind of make arrangements for a day and time for you to come in. Sometimes you can always just show up, but you want to ideally make sure that they have room before then. So I would contact them and have that discussion with them. I know, and Helpful Mom had made the comment. Oh gosh, there's so many great there's so many great comments. I stop the chat when I talk, and then I come back to it, and there's just all kinds of conversation going on in here. Huffle Mom, there's the comment had said, "I'd be willing to do a Q&A with the group to answer whatever questions people have." I might take you up on that. I think that would be interesting to talk more about that. Could you email me, Dana@thriveafterabuse.com, and let's discuss that a little bit more as to what questions would be comfortable and which ones wouldn't be, and then we'll kind of go from there. Let's see here. Oh, cool. Changing My Life says, "I finally got Hoopla." Thanks to you, Dana. Yeah, Hoopla is the app that a lot of libraries use. Libraries are getting high tech these days, you guys. It's amazing how, I, I don't know, how quick the world changes. I hadn't used the library in quite a while. I was always getting books, off of Audible or Amazon or whatever. And then somebody had told me one day, "Oh, they have this app, and you can go on there and get all of this stuff. It's wonderful." So it's worth checking into. Okay, River says, Dana, the altar work I have done has helped me to accept and love the parts of myself that I had judged unworthy of love. It brought true healing to my life and silenced the narcissist's haunting words. I would be so curious. That's wonderful. I'm beyond thrilled. Any victories that people have, please know you're not alone in that. I think we're all rooting for you. That's just awesome. Would you feel comfortable sharing a little bit more with either the community here or emailing me, Dana at thriveafterabuse.com, about what that kind of what work you did that you feel uh, helped you to accept these parts of yourself? Jennifer asks, what Dana, was working as a psychiatric nurse something you liked doing? I would think that it would be incredibly hard work emotionally and physically, but I would think it would be interesting as well. Yes, I really enjoyed being a psychiatric nurse. I enjoyed being a nurse in general. I did hospice and home care before I got into psychiatric nursing, and then I basically just stayed with psychiatric nursing after that. I had just the emotional component of it really kind of spoke to me, and that's how I got interested in learning more about trauma. Is I noticed time and time and time and time and time again, being a psychiatric nurse, and especially the position that I was in, where I was what's in our agency, what was known as a float nurse. So I was going between two different um, parts of, I don't know, this agency, I guess is what you would call it. So I saw hundreds of people. Our patient load was about 400 or so patients per side. So I was working with 800 people, and um, not all, obviously all at once. You know what I mean. But our patient load was a total of 800, which was a lot. And the significance of trauma, it just kept coming up: trauma, 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 trauma. And it made me wonder how much of what we're seeing here is trauma related, and is this being addressed in the most effective way possible? Because a lot of it is it's being handled by medication, and um, often handled by therapy. But we also had most of our patients or clients had such significant needs with housing, employment, food, that kind of stuff, that I'm not sure how effective therapy really was. It's the whole kind of Maslow's hierarchy. If somebody doesn't have those basic needs met, they're not going to be able to, food, clothing, shelter. If they don't have those basic needs met, they're not going to be at a place where they're able, uh, willing or able to try to meet their higher needs of self-esteem or self-actualization. They're busy with just surviving. And so it just made me really kind of question the whole system, and what can be done, what could we do differently, what could we do more of or less of, or what would be more effective, kind of a thing. And yeah, I mean, I think any facet of nursing or working with other people in general, and any type of mental or physical health capacity, it can be rewarding, but it can be really emotional. It can be depressing and discouraging at times, and it can be heart-wrenching. So it's kind of the whole, you know, runs the whole gamut of experiences there. Okay, let me scroll up here. Huffle Mom mentions to Fatima, while you're at the shelter, the workers will try to help you find a safe place to move away from your abuser. They may help you find work and or just give you money and supplies. Yes, that they will generally try to connect you with resources. Most shelters have access to a wide variety of resources. So it, um, they more likely than not will be able to kind of sit down with you and figure out like what we were talking about earlier about okay, what are your challenges right now with, is it money, is it employment, is it, food, clothing, shelter, kind of where are you and what are your needs? And then they'll work with you on a plan, and it's really nice because you have a team of people that are there and that want to see you succeed, and um, that can help answer questions and kind of give you some guidance. And of course, like I was saying, we're more than welcome to, we're more than willing to answer any questions that you think we might be able to help you with during this time. Let's see, let me scroll up here. Yes. So Huffle Mom says to Fatima, yes, they'll ask questions. The advocate's there. So when you call, they'll ask you a series of questions, and they're going to try to figure out if, first and foremost, if you're safe and if you can leave your home safely. And if you can, then they'll arrange a meeting with you to get to the shelter. So yes, that's about how that goes down. So I would give them a call. If you want to at least consider, I don't know if, I'm assuming you're on your phone now online, to Google domestic violence shelter with like your city after it and to see what comes up. Even if it doesn't look right, it gives you a place to start where you're like, ah, that one's really far away. You can call them and say, this is the city that I'm in. What counties or what areas do you guys service? Would this be the right shelter? Okay, it looks like Mr. Perfect has a question or a comment. So let me scroll up and find it. Okay. He says, one of my brothers is hiding the fact that he has put life insurance on his little brother's life without anybody else knowing about it. My little brother has the mind of a 10-year-old. I guess my question would be, who has guardianship of your younger brother? Is it your parents? Okay. And while we're waiting to hear back from Mr. Perfect, Fatima says, I feel suicidal, but I'm too scared to act on killing myself because I know that will not solve anything and that will give them what they want. So, okay, Fatima. Yeah, it sounds like you are in a really low place. Um, let's see. Can one of the admins, can you guys post the 1-800 number for the suicide hotline? Fatima, I would strongly encourage you to call this hotline. They're not going to trace the call. You can remain anonymous. These are people that are going to be there for you to talk to. So they're there to support you. I'm glad to hear that you're not comfortable with ending your life, but I I think we're all concerned that that you're even having these thoughts, because I think a lot of us have been there. It's a really dark and scary place to even be. So please just know that you're not alone in this. And I would encourage you, even maybe now, while the live stream's going on, might be a good time since we'll be here for about another, what is that, 2 hours to uh, consider consider calling a suicide hotline or a local shelter and just touching base with them. I think sometimes that first step of just making the call can be the most intimidating. Finder of Lost Songs says, "Hello, Dana. Could you please tell me roughly when the forum page will be working again?" That is a great question. That's been its own set of challenges. I am going to let me add this to my list. The problem is we changed how the website works, and that's why it's down. And I'm trying to kind of figure out a workaround to get the forum back up. Um, Hold on. Let me add this to my list. I will see if we can get something going here within like the next week. But I'm probably going to have to look into having somebody else do it, like hire somebody, because it's outside of my skill set for sure. Okay, thank you, Missouri Cowboy, for mentioning the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. It's 1-800-273-8255. And Bonnie, thank you for posting the link to it. It is suicidepreventionlifeline.org. Okay, let's see here. River says, "Dana, I'm actually working on a novel about my journey of healing that features my altars. It's almost done. I would love for you to read it." I would be honored. I would be honored to read it if you would like to send it to me. If you just put in the comment, so Dana at thriveafterabuse.com, and then put in the subject bar novel. So and put River, so I know who it is, and it doesn't go into my other folder. And also Finder of Lost Songs. Um, the forum, yes, our forum is currently down. It's like it's just not linked up. But we do have a Facebook group. The group is um, it's closed, but it's not private. So if you have a Facebook account, you can join. People are obviously going to see on your your name and all that. So you might want to, if that's even something you're interested in, to create a fake Facebook account and then consider joining the group that way. And the group is, if you do a search for Thrive After Abuse on Facebook, you'll see both we have a Facebook page and then we have the Facebook group. So you'd want to join the group if you're interested in that for the time being. Okay, Lori Says, I have a lot of past trauma and need to explain to know if I am actually healing now. Also, my 32-year-old son has me worried. This is when he was growing up and with his father and stepfather. So, I guess could you elaborate a little bit more? You mentioned, okay, you have a lot of past trauma. And what do you mean by you need to explain to know if you're actually healing now? Okay, so while you're answering that, Fatima mentions she's using a secret phone because she's not supposed to be on the internet because they took all the devices from her. Yes, Missouri Cowboy, that is very well said. He says, yes, Fatima, a call, sometimes hearing a voice, either an advocate at a domestic violence shelter or somebody at a suicide hotline that hears you. It's validation and it can provide comfort, and telling your story is a necessary part of healing. And Mohammed says, Fatima, we care about you. Yes. And Jack was mentioning he says, Dana says she's not a technical person, although she's doing what she can to learn. Yes, very true. He says, hiring a web programmer might be the answer. Yes and no, that's its own set of challenges. Um, so I am completely open to hiring somebody to help me figure this out. It's just a matter of having somebody figure it out. Okay, let's see here. Let me scroll up. Changing My Life says, yeah, I started with just a phone call. It was weeks after that that I finally left. Yeah, I think kind of getting that, putting your feelers out and seeing, okay, well, what kind of support is out there? What is available for you can be very reassuring. That way the next step isn't so overwhelming. And then you're not alone in that. Then you have some type of support system that's lined up. Okay, let's see. Let me scroll down here. Fatima says, "It's nice hearing that people care. I'm not used to that, so thank you." Well, I'm this community is really wonderful. And the people that tend to be on the Wednesday night chat, there's a lot of familiar faces that are here week after week, and it's just a beautiful thing to see. And there's lots of people all over the world you know, that are in your corner that have experienced things similar to you and that understand. Fatima says, so I just pack the necessities and leave when they're not home. And that is after I've contacted a shelter. Generally, yes. So I would say the first step would be to contact a shelter. And sometimes you'll have people that will call a shelter and that are in your exact position. They're like, you know what, I'm not sure if I'm ready to leave or not. I just wanted to call and find out more about the process, and can let me know what all should I bring, what shouldn't I bring, um, how, are you guys full, is it okay if I call here a few different times? talking to them. I guarantee you, there's nothing that you're going to say or ask that they haven't heard before. So it's okay. It's okay to call and talk and say, these are my concerns. Uh, you know, where do I go from here? Lori says, can I email you to explain my story? I feel like I need to write a book. Yes. Yeah, you can. Just FYI, when people email me, please know that you're going to get an automated response, but that says I get a lot of emails. You can find me on Facebook, or you can find me on these live streams, these kinds of things. But please know that so don't get discouraged by that. That's just an autoresponder. But if you put your name, I'll have it on my list. I'll be looking out for you. And Huffle Mom also asked, she said, Lori, do you have any access to therapy? And I also wanted to just second that advice, or that question. Just for a lot of people, just kind of FYI, there's a lot of domestic violence agencies out there. I think it's becoming more common than not, where they offer um, free therapy to people that have experienced abuse. It's more of like their outreach program. You don't need to stay, you don't need to be in a shelter, you don't need to be even a female. It's open to men and women. They also tend to have children's therapists. Some shelters even have sexual abuse therapists. And so I would call, and if you're interested in um, free counseling, and calling the local domestic violence center in your area and seeing if that's a service that they have. If they don't have it, then asking, is there another agency in your area that does? Because a lot of them, like I said, a lot of them do. I've got a few people on here that are saying that they're good with technology, and uh, about the forum. Real quick, here's the issue with the forum. The My old website was built on WordPress. The forum is in a file. So I had my own hosting with HostGator. Okay. The forum is still in a folder in HostGator. I'm still paying every month for that hosting, even though that website, we just had issue after issue after issue after issue with that WordPress site. I was updating plugins. I had hired people. And anyways, long story short, I basically needed to just scrap it and rebuild it. And I don't have the technical skills or the emotional energy to go through that again. It was just absolutely so defeating to deal with that with that website. Um, so we rebuilt it on Wix. I didn't think at the time, I just didn't make the connection at the time that the forum, I can't move, the Wix won't let me move it over to them because they're hosting the website. So there's no way for me to move the forum over. So we would need to have, um, and I have been asking other computer people, like, what are the options? Do we keep, and here's the other thing too, the forum software that I'm using over on the WordPress site, it's called MyBB. It's outdated. It doesn't work. They haven't done any updates in a long time. It's not really mobile compatible. So then there was talk of, well, maybe we just should go with a brand new forum that Wix offers. So then that was kind of the talk, but I guess I've been stuck in indecision of, I'm not sure what to do, because I guess I'm just afraid of making a mistake and then starting something that is going to, you know, have its own set of issues and just end up being a big complicated mess. Yes, I agree. And Huffle Mom says back to the domestic violence thing. She says, unfortunately, there are fewer DV shelters for men than for women. Jack and I live in Washington. The nearest DV shelter for men is in Idaho. Yes, this is true. M- Interestingly enough, and again, funding for a lot of places have changed. The place that I had been working at had the shelter was all women, but they had funding that they would actually put up men or, yeah, I guess men, uh, in uh, like hotels or motels. So there was funding available. It just wasn't within like the shelter setting. Fatima says, so Dana, if I ever do leave, I'm scared I might go back. How do I prevent myself from returning if I leave? Well, this is very valid. I think everybody that's ever left an abusive situation has had this concern, especially those who haven't had the kind of life experience to stand on their own, to be on their own. That's like we were talking about, that's a skill set. And it's something that we all struggle with. Nobody does this perfectly right out of the gate. It takes a little while to kind of get your sea legs with, budgeting and, job and the whole kind of adulting process. But it definitely helps if you have a support system there and that you've got people that are kind of giving you some guidance as far as, okay, let's come up with, here are some things that you need to consider or that would be good for you to consider. If you get a job, um, or if you have funds for financial aid from school, they'll help you formulate a plan and they'll help with a lot of that. And then I think realizing that or telling yourself, coming up with some ideas. Okay, if you're tempted, you know the reasons as to why you want to go. So when those difficult times do happen, how are you going to handle that? You know, what would be some potential reasons that you would feel tempted to go back? So the more clarity that you have now, the more you can anticipate what are going to be some of those strings that pull at you. And the more you can anticipate, the more you can you can just be prepared for that if and when it does happen. Uh, let's see here. Fatima, I know we also spoke about you potentially contacting counseling center if you're not comfortable with the domestic violence place, contacting a counseling center near you. Generally, a lot of either community college, but generally four-year universities have a free counseling center. They're doing sessions online now because of the COVID thing, but that might be another resource to explore as far as kind of getting some support during this time and coming up with a plan. Um, Jennifer asks, is there a reason why DV shelters can't have both and just have separate wings of a building? Oh, like male and female? I think um well, every shelter is different. So a lot of them are just houses. They're not like buildings. They're at a house in a regular neighborhood, and um, you're sharing bathrooms. You've got kind of having that co-ed house that would just, I think, be an ongoing concern and potential trigger for everybody in there. Um, it would be wonderful. I think that's actually a good idea to have if you could find a house that was big enough where you could staff both sides, that could work. Uh, let's see here. Bluebird said, well, if the forum is still being hosted, if the forum is still hosted, running and accessible from the web, then I guess there just needs to be a link set to the new site to the old forum address. Yes, but my understanding of it is that the old forum address, it's a subdomain of the domain that is no longer being hosted on HostGator. So the old forum address was thriveafterabuse.com/forum. But now the domain is at Wix. So my understanding is I can't have it go. I'd have to get a different domain, which is fine, but I'm just not sure if that's the solution. If I got a different domain and had that at HostGator just for the forum, moved that file over, which I could do, but then it still doesn't solve the problem that the forum software is so outdated, and um, the forum developers aren't looking. They've been saying that they're going to update it now for years, so it's not mobile optimized. So part of me is like, well, maybe it's just time to just somehow start over and get do something different with the forum. I don't know. Okay, let's see. Let me. Yes, JJ was asking, did Fatima ever give her age? Yes, she is 18. Ellie asks, how do you guys open up to strangers or estranged friends? Do you guys ever feel ashamed about what you've been through? That's Those are two really big questions. Uh, I can kind of give, my personal answer on that. I'll be curious to see what other people say, but uh, opening up to strangers is something I have learned to really not do. It's, you know, kind of overwhelming for them. And then in 9.995% of the, or 9.99 times out of 10, they don't handle it the way that I hope that they will. So for that reason, I don't share deeply personal things with strangers for that reason. There really needs to be a high degree of like emotional trust and emotional safety that's been built up in order to say, hey, this is kind of what I've been through. So, and that trust and safety, as we're getting to know a person and we're kind of telling them bits and pieces of our story, this trust and emotional safety is built up by observing how are they handling what you're telling them. So if and sometimes, because most people, if they haven't been through something like this, or if it's been so long that they have kind of forgotten how delicate of a subject it can be, sometimes it can help to set them up for success and to say, I have something I really wanted to talk to you a little bit about. And, um, you know, this is, please just listen. I don't want to answer a bunch of questions, or I don't um, like I don't want to argue about it, or I don't want to have to feel like I have to defend myself. I just want to share this with you. So sometimes letting them know, because what people's response tends to be is they want people by and large are uncomfortable with other people's pain. We all are. And so when we see somebody that's telling us something that's, deeply disturbing, a knee jerk reaction that we tend to have is we want them to feel okay. And which leads to saying all kinds of insensitive things, kind of like, well, look on the bright side, or it could have been worse, or these kinds of things. And th- those comments tend to make a survivor feel really invalidated. And that person, the vast majority of the time, doesn't even mean to invalidate them. They just don't know what to say. So kind of keep that in mind too. So I guess making sure that there's emotional trust that's built up, setting up the person to succeed when you're gonna tell them something kinda heavy, so they know that you're not looking for them to heal you or to say magic words that are somehow gonna make you feel better. And, um, yeah. And then also I think having for us to kind of manage our expectations that most people tend to not know how to handle this kind of news, and I would just kind of emotionally prepare yourself for a wide variety of responses from them. Sometimes people hearing about people being in abusive relationships, it makes them angry. It triggers something deep inside of them. They become very defensive. Uh, this is why it's important to kind of go slow with opening up. As far as, do you guys ever feel ashamed about what you've been through? I know for me personally, there's still times where I struggle with that, but I for sure did the first, I would say at least year or so. I was embarrassed. I felt stupid. I felt ashamed. How did this happen to me? How did I misread this whole relationship so terribly? Um, and then telling your story to other people, and then of course you're kind of feeling like, do they think that too? Like what's wrong with her that she got caught up in this? Or um, it so there's a lot of that where it just seems, yeah, it just feels really minimizing and invalidating, and there's a lot of shame and embarrassment that goes with it. But for those that have gone through it and then they remember the process, because that's the challenge too with all of this, is there comes a certain point in a person's healing where your mindset just changes so much with how you have been able to kind of integrate that experience into who you are, into like in a positive way. You there's you've been able to squeeze out a lot of lessons from this and been able to use this towards your highest and greatest good. And it's easy to forget about how um, the mindset that we had when we were in this relationship, or how manipulative it was, and how it dragged us through hell. And I think nobody ever thinks that they would be in an abusive relationship, just like nobody ever thinks that they'd ever join a cult. And so when they're on the other side of that, and then they get out of an abusive relationship or they get out of a cult, they're deeply disturbed and ashamed because other people don't understand. "Oh, how could you possibly join a cult? Didn't you know better? Come on, that was so obvious, blah, blah, blah. I could have told you so." And they're embarrassed because they didn't see it at the time until things got really severe. So, you know, but these things are difficult to see clearly when we're in them. Okay, let's see. Yeah, I would agree with that. Montana says, honestly, here is the only place anyone has a flippin' clue. And not just here on my channel, but I think within the whole kind of narcissistic abuse community, I would agree with that. I think by and large, that I know for me personally, that's where I found the most answers, the most validation, the most support, where I had struggled for decades uh, trying to make sense of things. And then when I went through these relationships, it was years and years after that, trying to make sense of all of that. And I don't even know how many therapists I went through, and I wasn't getting I just did wasn't getting the clarity that I was seeking. So I think oftentimes, like with any other community, when you have a bunch of people, whatever it might be, whether it's it's emotional, psychological abuse, narcissistic abuse, or it's eating disorders, or it's alcoholism, or it's fibromyalgia, or cancer, or some sort of mental or physical health issue. It's those communities where there's other people that are in it, that tends to be where you're going to get a lot of uh, the most validation and the most clarity, because even doctors and therapists, there's information that they know and all of this, but it's a totally different thing to actually live it. And it tends to be the survivors or the experiencers of these things. They're the ones that are on the internet nonstop, really doing deep dives into research because they're desperate to make their lives work. So yeah, and thankfully with the internet, there's lots of different uh, resources out there for narcissistic abuse. Montana makes a comment, says, "Shoot, I think my boundaries must still be terrible. I still blab and guess I'm still seeking to fill that socializing or want hugs void." Ugh. Boundaries are a skill, like playing the piano, like anything else, and it just takes time and it takes practice. And unfortunately, like with so many things in life, uh, hindsight tends to be our greatest teacher. And some of these lessons are really difficult it, to learn any other way than through experience, and then kind of having this analysis of, well, what happened here, what worked, what didn't work, and why. And it's incredibly painful when we're trying out new boundaries, new ways of interacting with other people, and something doesn't work yet again. And it can feel very defeating, and it can feel like, oh great, my boundaries are still terrible, like when am I ever going to stop going around this mountain? But realize that every time you have one of these insights of, oh gosh, well, actually, that hasn't been working for me, and maybe that's what's going on, I'm going to try to do things a little differently, that's still a victory. And that's all any of us can do. So we kind of just have to, you learn as much as you can, ideally, uh, not the hard way. But unfortunately, I think there's just some things that we have to learn, and we realize, okay, this isn't working. And then we start doing something different. Montana is asking what the next book club book is. I will tell you. Let me look it up real quick. It is. This was a suggestion in a YouTube comment that I got last week, who said, check out the book Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It by Kamal Ravikant. I don't believe I'm saying that name properly. So, Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It. Got some pretty rave reviews. So, we will be checking that out. Let me see if I can put the link here in the chat. Let's see. Okay. Okay, looks like Fatima, are you signing off for tonight? Looks like Fatima said she'll be here next week if she's able to. James asks, are there any audiobooks regarding narcissistic abuse? Yes, absolutely. So I've written and published 3, and the different books that we read every book club have to do with some sort of facet of either understanding abuse or healing from abuse. So if you go to the link that I just posted right above your name, you can see our book list. And it's on my list of things to do. I need to go back and reformat all of my old book club notes because we've been doing this book club thing for, I don't know, 3 years now. So there's, what is that? Math, 12 times 3, 36, 36 books that I have, roughly books that I have notes on, um, that we recommend, or you can at least you can kind of get our take on it. I would encourage you, if you're looking for audiobooks to understand this topic better. Well, like I mentioned, I have 3 books. Of course, I'm biased, so like I think my books are a good place to start. You can find my books. My name is Dana Morningstar, so you can find me, you know, uh, Audible, Amazon, anywhere. Let's see, trying to think. Other audiobooks you can probably find. I would look into um, some of my personal favorites. Pete Walker has I really like all of his books. Complex PTSD. There's some books from Pia Melody on the intimacy factor and the codependency factor, which I think are also fantastic. Um, I'll be curious. There's quite a few out there. The challenge is it's trying to figure out where to find these books. So there's a lot of books, but it's I guess the terminology that people might be looking for are a little bit different. So I would encourage so the 3 books that I have, the first one is called Start Here. So it's kind of creative title, right? Start Here. That is just kind of gives the basics of frequently asked questions, terminology, common concepts, these kinds of things. The second book builds off of that first book, but you can read them all independent. Like, you don't have to read the first book to understand the second book. The second book is called Out of the Fog and expands on the concepts from the first book, but is written in such a way that you can just start with the second book. The third book is called The Narcissist's Playbook, and that goes into a lot of um, deep dive into like manipulation and how to break free from manipulation, if you're interested. And if anybody else has any books that you have found personally helpful, please put them in the chat or leave them in the comments after this video airs, and uh, help other people. Oh, very cool. Lori is installing Hoopla right now. Oh, it's a whole new world, Lori. There's just so much out there that's on audio, and it's just so cool that you can order these books and they return automatically. So cool. And you support your local library. Just awesome, awesome, awesome. So let's see. Okay, so Fatima, I'm not sure if you're signing off or not yet, but Um, yes, I hope that you were able to call, if it was safe for you to call either a shelter or a hotline and just to touch base with somebody. Uh, let's see here. Let me. Montana mentions the book by Lundy Bancroft. Why Does He Do That? Is the title. Lori says, I love the library. Yay. Yeah, I do too. That's such a cool thing. That the whole concept of the library is a cool thing. Another book that I'm trying to think of books here. I've read so many, and there's so many good ones out there. The Verbally Abusive Relationship I thought was absolutely excellent. I want to say that's by Patricia Evans. And oh, you know what, Jack? Thanks for making that comment. I am not sure if I was able to follow up with Mr. Perfect. Mr. Perfect situation. Okay, so he has a younger brother and an older brother. His younger brother is cognitively or developmentally around age 10, and his older brother has life insurance on the younger brother. And my question was, who has guardianship of the younger brother? Uh, so I think whoever has guardianship is the person that would, I think they have to know that. I don't know if a person can get life insurance on another person without that person being notified. So it might, if the older brother is the one that has guardianship, then you know, there might be more going on there. I guess if I were you, I would encourage you to express your concerns to your brother's guardian. Okay, let's see. Devora says, yes, Patricia Evans has a whole series on verbal abuse. Susanna asks, can I publish a list of books on the Facebook site? I can see if I can come up with something. I mean, I definitely can link or copy and paste the list of books that we're going to be reading for the rest of this year. Um, I could see, I'll have to think. Maybe I could do, I'm so busy this next week. It's ridiculous. But uh, I can add it to my list of things to do. I don't know when I'll get to it. Hopefully I can in the, the next week or two, but maybe put together a list of like my top 10 or top 20 books that I personally recommend. It's one of those things. Everybody, it's so funny how we don't, none of us read a book. We don't really read the book the way it's written. We read the book through the lens of who we are at the time. And so what something might not resonate with me, for example, but it might really resonate with somebody else or vice versa. And that's kind of the cool thing about, and the challenging thing about books is it just depends on where that person's um, level of understanding and healing is at that time. I'm continually surprised when we've had different book club discussions where people have said, "Oh, they found a certain aspect of a book really triggering," um, or what I find triggering, they don't at all. And I just think, really, it's just wild how different our perceptions can be of the same book. Okay, let's see. Oh, wow. Ava's talking about her ex and just the level of deceit and, yeah, just sadistic manipulation. Oh boy. How to manipulate a therapist. He had an entry in his journal on how to teach people how to be evil, how to take over the world. The list goes on. Yeah, that definitely sounds, especially the how to exploit luck, how to take over the world. That definitely sounds like grandiose behavior. The rest of it, the teaching people how to be evil and how to manipulate a therapist, that just sounds, kind of uh, like your general antisocial type behavior. Uh, it's darker than I would say most antisocial behavior is, but yeah, yikes. Mm, that's just deeply disturbing. What a shock. Yeah, all of a sudden, I was shocked. Yeah, I can imagine coming across something like that. And she says, yeah, she talked to his mom because she was concerned about how he was saying such hurtful things to me. I never told her any details, and she ended up telling him that she thought I had borderline personality disorder. Well, and I guess I would have to kind of wonder too, well, did his mom tell you that she told him that? Or could this be another lie? And keep in mind too that when you're dealing with a person with pathological behavior, so disturbing behavior that's problematic outside the realm of kind of quote unquote normal problematic behavior, right? It's not just their behavior that's the issue, it's the mindset that accompanies that behavior. So, a lot of time, I would say probably the vast majority of the time, you're talking about a person who lacks accountability. They truly don't see their part. They feel victimized whenever anybody sets a boundary with them or whenever they're told no. They have an outrageous level of entitlement. Um, their worldview is not that of uh, agreeableness, it's not that of teamwork. Whereas, kind of, um, yeah, I'd say kind of quote unquote most normal, decent people, it's we understand when we want to work with other people. We're able to work with other people to get our needs met through friendships, through coworkers, through what have you. Those that are more on like the personality disordered side of the spectrum, it's they rank very high in neuroticism and very high in or very low, I should say, in agreeability. So it's their mindset is that of, so when a person's ranking really low on agreeability, it's they're also ranking very high in kind of domination. So there is no team orientedness, which is what you'd find on more of that the agreeability side of that spectrum. That's not so there. It's domination. It's win lose mentality, and they tend to have a very um, win lose mindset. It's just all about them all of the time, and if it is about somebody else, it's a manipulation. Um, and that can be difficult to kind of sort out and see, because some of them can really do a great job of acting the part of like the Bill Cosbys of the world, of acting like the exact opposite of what they are. So it can take some time sometimes to see them, for what they are. And anyways, the point of that was when you're interacting with somebody that has such a pathological personality, then the way that they view the world is just very different. So they tend to present themselves as the victim of every single situation because they're not accountable for their actions. They feel completely entitled, you know. Well, let's say they shake a baby, right? Their baby's crying, they shake the baby, now the baby has brain damage. And you talk to somebody that's done that, and you'll hear, uh, I mean, sometimes you have parents that might be incredibly remorseful and they're horrified at what happened. They just snapped and they lost it. But people that have this pattern of abusive behavior, they feel entitled. There is no real remorse there. They're like, well, the baby wouldn't stop crying. I have to work tomorrow. Yeah, I shook the baby, but I had to stop it from crying. And then they feel victimized when there's consequences for their actions. And that's a pattern for them. So in relationships, if people don't give them their way, you know, uh, regardless of how terrible, they minimize their own behavior. So no matter how terrible they've treated other people, they expect to not have any consequences. It's a very immature mindset. It's like, well, I told you I was sorry, or you deserved it. I'm not going to say I'm sorry. You just need to get over it. It's your fault, not mine. And they present this skewed version of reality where they're leaving out like giant chunks of their behavior, right? So let's take that example again of a person who might shake a baby. And if if they've got this pattern, they have the mindset of an abusive person, right? Then in their mind, they might say, oh, I'm being framed by the police. I can't even believe it. I don't know. I didn't even do it that hard. I didn't even shake the baby that hard. I didn't even shake it for that long. I mean, I'm not a perfect parent, right? And they're minimizing, they're shifting blame, they're doing all of these things instead of owning their behavior. And you'll see that time and time and time again. And if they are ever accountable, it's because they're just trying to act the part to get out of consequences. Um, let's see. Ava says, yeah, his mom has a psychology background. She teaches at the local college. I was shocked she said that. Okay, she said she did say that she thought that you had borderline personality disorder. She said, I asked her directly. Okay, well, I'm actually glad that you followed up what I had asked, because this gives a chance for us to just explore this a little bit. It's not uncommon for people. It's, I think there tends to be this very kind of black or white view of uh, behavior. And especially when it comes to personality labels or personality disorders, like especially borderline personality disorder. This is a personality disorder that really, all personalities and kind of by default personality disorders all exist on a spectrum, right? A person can, for example, be kind and giving, or they can be Mother Teresa. Like it's a spectrum. A person can have some narcissistic behaviors. You have the Kim Kardashians of the world, and then to the extreme, you have the uh, Donald Trumps of the world. So it's a spectrum, and um, so it's the same. It's the same with personality traits in general, with everything. So with borderline personality disorder, you'll hear there's a lot of people that have nothing positive to say. That borderline personality is highly abusive, it's destructive, it's kind of this, that, and the other. And it's not necessarily uncommon for a person with borderline personality disorder to get tangled up with a narcissist. In fact, I would say, I heard once somebody had said it, I thought it was the perfect way to describe it, that people with borderline personality disorder tend to be a narcissist's favorite snack. And the reason for that is because part of borderline personality disorder has to do with trouble with emotional regulation. So a person can become very volatile very quickly. They can go very quick from I hate you to I love you. There's often um, this very fragmented sense of self. There's fear, major fear of abandonment. The result of that fear of abandonment is that they hang on to relationships. So it's that, and this again, figuring out with behavior, is this an event or is this a pattern? If there's been a pattern, and this can also go into attachment theory, and it does go into attachment theory as well. So there's, insecure attachment styles, and then there's the secure attachment style. And there's a lot of people out there with various forms of insecure attachment styles. And when a person doesn't have that secure sense of attachment, um, they tend to be more in a scramble to stay in relationships, to make them work, to negotiate their own dignity and self-worth in order they're erasing themselves in order to make the relationship work. So, um, but just because, even if you were, let's say, if you were to have borderline personality disorder, that still doesn't somehow excuse his behavior or make his behavior any less, harmful, hurtful, dangerous, um, erratic, any of that. But I don't know if I would be asking her a whole lot, because who knows what all he's been saying. And if he's got a bunch of this kind of disturbing stuff on his phone, we can just look at that enough to know this is not, um, this is concerning, right? So this is all of this stuff that he's doing. It's very concerning. And who knows what he's saying to other people, or the kind of the picture that he's painting of you. Oh, very cool. Thank you, Lori. She says, "Oh, I just got out of the fog, your book, my first audiobook on my new app, Hoopla." Well, I hope that you like it. So there's lots out there. Like I said, I'll kind of start brainstorming a list and see what I come up with here. Oh, I agree. Sam says, he's talking to Jack. He says, "I do wonder how people can do all this evil to other people and then go pray." Like, compartmentalized empathy. Yeah, it's really wild. Really, really wild. Uh, I have often wondered the same thing. I think we've all wondered the same thing. Like, gosh, how, you look at that and you're like, how on earth do you consider yourself to be a kind of insert religion here, and yet you're lying, stealing, cheating, you know, hu like maliciously hurting other people. Like, how do you reconcile those two? Because that's very strange. Ava says, this person, he's the one who said he didn't love me. He is a narcissist. And since it is part of cluster B, don't you think he was projecting his own disorder and traits onto me? Well, there's a very solid chance that he was projecting his own stuff onto you, but it also sounds like uh, he's malicious and intentional, and that can really be some of the worst, most dangerous qualities out there. So projection, again, projection is something. It's a defense mechanism. That's something that we all can do if we're not. And it's an unconscious or subconscious thing that we're doing. So it's where we're trying to distance ourselves from these uncomfortable thoughts or feelings or actions that we have. It's weird. The way the human brain works is just so strange, and it's so fascinating. So if we're not comfortable with some aspect of ourselves, what tends to happen is we're trying to suppress it, but it's coming out or putting it on other people. This is why you see people that will, uh, they're all of a sudden they're accusing you of cheating. And you're like, oh, where is this coming from? Like, I'm not cheating in the slightest. I haven't, there's nothing that I'm doing that like I haven't, I don't know where is this coming from. You know, my behavior hasn't changed. I'm not cheating. And then you find out later on that they've been cheating on you. That is pretty classic projection. Or they are accusing you of stealing from the company when in fact they are. Or um, you know, they're telling you what a terrible parent you are when in fact they're the one that's doing all kinds of terrible things. It's it's bizarre. But with this guy, Ava, I would be more concerned. People that enjoy creating chaos um, are some of the most dangerous people out there because that's what they do for fun. That's what they do to relieve boredom. That's their go-to. Most people, we'll go read a book, we'll watch Netflix, we'll call a friend. We meet those same needs in other ways. People that are more along those lines of like that chaotic evil, they like to destroy things. It makes them feel significant. It gives them a sense of power. It relieves boredom. It meets a lot of their needs in kind of one fell swoop. And people like that, really, you're just best off distancing yourself from them completely because it's intentional and it's malicious. A lot of times, really destructive behavior, it the abuse might be intentional, but it's coming out of more of like an entitlement, not so much out of more of a like a sadistic entertainment kind of a thing. So yeah, Sam was talking about dark triad. Yep, that's dangerous stuff. So dark triad, it's these three traits. You have narcissism. So you have the personality disorder of, uh, you know, pathological narcissism. You have Machiavellianism, which is extreme learned behavior. So learned manipulation, how to kind of get through life. And you have psychopathy, which is more of like the brain changes. So you have lack of empathy, lack of remorse. You have significant changes in the brain, those areas that of that person's brain, which normally are geared towards connection and establishing and nurturing relationships and ability to relate to others, is significantly diminished. So it's you've got this trifecta of uh, you know, big red flag basically going on. So you have the brain issues with psychopathy, you have the personality issues of narcissism, and then you have the learned behavior of the Machiavellianism. Oh boy. Ava says, yeah, I filed for divorce after 3 months of marriage. I don't blame you. Good for you. I am so glad you got out of there. What a shock. Just what a shock. I don't know if you're familiar or how familiar you are, if at all, with my story, but the main I was in a relationship with a man. This was probably close to 10 years ago now. And God, it's hard to believe it was that long ago. And we lived together. Um, we had what I thought was an amazing relationship. It, we just had this wonderful uh, life. And ironically, I was also working at a domestic violence center teaching classes, and I was an advocate, and I would teach classes on all kinds of life skills and basically, uh, red flags of dangerous people. And kind of fast forward a couple years, well, then I stumbled across he had a double life, and um, Yeah, it was all kinds of online dating accounts. I got into his email. I was just going through everything, and it was everything had been a lie. I contacted his ex-wife, and she had also had only stayed married to him for a couple months, 5 years or so previous, and had divorced him because she found out about all just this level of deceit that was just off the charts. And she had told me, she's like, if I were you, I would just run. Like, just run, just get out of there. Don't look back. This guy is not who he claims to be at all. And he had lied about everything. Everything in his past was a lie. And that really, really rattled me to the core of how on earth could I be sharing a life with somebody? Oh, and it, and there's more to it. I mean, how could I share a life with somebody and I didn't ever see this side of them? So that completely rattled me. But then towards the tail end, the last, I don't know, handful of months or so I was in that relationship, uh, I had been, I just wasn't feeling well. And this went on for a while. And I was confused. I'm like, we had propane. I'm like, is it a propane leak? Is it the altitude? Is it depression? Like, what is wrong with me? Why do I felt drugged? Like, what is wrong with me? And my mom at this time was having rotator cuff surgery, and she lives in another state. And she had called me and she's like, Dana, I don't think I can do this on my own after surgery. She's like, I don't know how I'm going to get dressed. I don't know how I'm going to go grocery shopping. I think I need help. Can you come out and stay with me? I said, "Yes, absolutely." I went out and stayed with her for I forget how long it was, probably close to a month. And pretty much the day that I got in town, I started feeling better. And I couldn't figure it out. I'm like, this is so weird. And like, well, I don't think it can be a propane leak because the dogs are fine and Jack seems to be fine. I don't, I mean, if it's depression, like it's weird that it would clear up right away. I could not figure it out. And it wasn't until after I stumbled across his whole double life and all of that, that I began to question, like, was he poisoning me? Was he drugging me? What was going on? And there was so much, like so much more. He'd been introducing me to people he'd been sleeping with. He was sleeping with uh, anybody and everybody. I mean, it was so just devastating. And um, a big part of my challenge with moving forward from all of that was I didn't I didn't have the clarity of w- outside of his ex-wife. Like I just had suspicions that he was doing something to make me sick. Like we were going to start this business together and then that fell through. And I think he really thought um I'm pretty sure he thought that I had all of this money. And I was very, oh, like, no, I don't have any money. Like, I don't know. And it was because I had multiple rental properties, but this was right after the whole housing, the real estate crash. So if anything, I was upside down in a lot of these properties. I owed money. Like I had no money. And I don't think he believed me. I think he thought I was, I don't know, like playing modest or something. And then when he realized, no, I don't, I, well, I think when he realized I couldn't finance him, I couldn't support him, then that's when I became disposable. And it was sort of like, well, how do I get rid of her now? So, anyways, because I didn't have proof of that, I felt like I was overreacting because I wasn't sure what had really happened. And then I was really hard on myself because all I had solid proof of was that had been cheating on me with dozens, if not potentially hundreds of people that whole time. And I mean, I was having night terrors. I couldn't trust people. I was withdrawing. I remember even telling people at the time, I feel like I have PTSD, but I didn't think that was possible. Cause I'm like, well, nothing, I'm like, what really happened? I mean, it was just extreme deceit, like, but that can't cause PTSD. I just didn't know. I just didn't know then what I know now. So, um, yeah, it rocks your world with Everything, your own perceptions of reality, your judgment, how you interact with other people, um, all of that. It's awful. Let's see. Bonnie says, Dana, I have an old friend who looked me up and wants to connect, but she is drama and chaos. I am afraid her needs are beyond me. I tend to be an overgiver. I think it may be toxic to reconnect. Well, Bonnie, I think your thought process really just kind of covers all the bases, doesn't it? So if you're like, gosh, this pattern with this woman is she is nothing but a headache. Right? She's drama and chaos. And uh, her friendship is a two-way street. It's about creating this nurturing, supportive dynamic between two people. It's not about her needs um, you to be there to support or take care of her needs. That's already you're starting off with that huge imbalance, right? For a friendship to truly be nourishing and supportive, it needs to have that balance there. And uh, so it sounds like you are already aware that that is not there and that you already tend to be an overgiver. It would be, I agree with you that it would be toxic to reconnect if that's the dynamic that you're walking into. So if you're like, gosh, this is what I'm walking into this very unbalanced dynamic. She's drama, she's a fire, and she's looking for a fire hose. And that's what the dynamic is continually. Then there is no give and take. It's a one-way street, and that's not going to work for you. So could this dynamic potentially work if you had some boundaries and set boundaries with her and just didn't feed into this? Possibly. But then you have to ask yourself, uh, is this something you even want? Is this a door you even want to open to figure out if it's worth it to have to continually implement boundaries and uh, just handle all of the drama and chaos? And it's okay uh, if you're not. Yeah, possibly. Alicia says, I felt physically ill and lethargic when he was around. When he'd be away for more than a few days, I suddenly felt better. I think my body was trying to tell me something I couldn't and or refused to see. That could be it too. I mean, stress can really take its toll on a person, especially if we're struggling with uh, identifying, verbalizing what it is that we're experiencing. And that's oftentimes the case with more subtle forms of abuse in general, but especially verbal, emotional, psychological, where it just flies under the radar for so many people and they don't know. They're like, I don't know why I'm depressed or why I'm anxious or why I'm constantly sick or feeling run down. But the reality is they're in this toxic relationship or toxic environment day in and day out where it's just sucks the life out of them, but they they're not able to um, they don't have the vocabulary to describe what's happening. But then once the light does go on and then they start like, oh, does start clicking, it they're able to better understand, oh my gosh, no wonder I chronically had headaches, or no wonder I gained a bunch of weight or lost a bunch of weight or slept too much or didn't sleep enough, or no wonder. Uh, so Bonnie says, I want to help this gal, but I feel like it's walking into a firestorm and I don't think I am equipped for that level of firefighting. Well, I think I support you in that. I think it's good that you have that level of awareness. And You know, um, when a person is constantly in crisis like that, it's it can be exhausting because friendships, you kind of go through highs and lows and there's good times and bad times. But if it's chronic drama and chaos, that's exhausting. And that's more along the lines of, like you said, this is outside your skill set. Like it sounds like she really might just need a therapist, um, and some more intense help. Lori says, I have a hard time with friendships. I think you are not alone in that. There are quite a few people in this community that tend to struggle with that. And sometimes, I think a lot of times, it can be a boundary issue, um, where if a person's grown up, if you have a significant history of trauma and abuse, then odds are there was never really any healthy understanding of boundaries, standards, deal breakers, or communication. So all of that, there's a good chance that there's all of that's off balance to some degree. And I say this all the time and I absolutely mean it. I really don't think that most people have a good balance with this because these skills are not taught and it's not something that that any of us just, absorb or um, even if you have it role modeled at home, if you're one of the lucky ones that have, this ideal childhood, it's still, it needs to be more spelled out than what's just role modeled. And because of that, because it's not, um, I think most people really struggle with it and they don't even realize that they struggle with it. It's not until later on in life that some sort of significant relationship in their life isn't working. And that's when they start seeking answers and, um, realize and examining these different imbalances. So, but it can be imbalances with boundaries. It can be imbalances with, different type of attachment styles, different types of expectations of other people. Um, a lot of people that have experienced trauma tend to be more on that over giving side of the spectrum. And as a result, they tend to be uh, people pleasing. They tend to be very passive. They have a hard time um, being honest with themselves and with other people, being assertive about their wants and needs and thoughts and feelings and opinions. And when that imbalance is present, this it also tends to go hand in hand with codependency, where it's this low feeling of self-worth of, well, I'm not lovable or worth it on my own. Like I don't have enough to be able to have a balanced, I don't have enough value to offer somebody for there to be a balanced dynamic here. So I'm going to overgive. And and ideally they might, either you're going to overgive, you're going to give 110% in that friendship, whether through time, energy, money, you know, being overly forgiving, you name it, you're overgiving. And it's a form of like social currency. I'm going to over give so that you see that I have value, so that you keep me in your life. This is all uh subconscious. Like it's not a conscious thing that most people do. Or um the flip side of that, if a person's gone through significant trauma and they have relationship difficulties, it can be that they are more of the on the avoidant side of the spectrum, where they're terrified of being hurt again and they tend to push people away. So they isolate, they don't spend time, they don't nurture friendships, they just don't want to be hurt again. And but they might not realize that that's what they're doing. They just realize, gosh, I have a really hard time keeping friendships. Why is that? Yep. I'm glad to hear that, Bonnie. Bonnie was saying one thing that I had said over and over again was, do not deal with people that treat you with a lack of dignity and respect. Uh, that is, she said, that has been my North Star and it's helping me today. So yeah, there's lots of, and I'll just elaborate on that quickly. There's a lot of skills out there that are workable. Nobody knows where another person's boundaries are until they make them known. That's the whole purpose of assertive communication. And there's certain things out there that are negotiable. There's certain things out there that are not. If we're talking a person has an inability to treat others on a consistent basis with if they're lacking dignity, or you're feeling like that you have to sacrifice your dignity in order to keep this relationship going, or if they're disrespecting you in such a profound way that's that it just showed that there's kind of contempt, disdain, hostility, those kind of emotions, that level of disgust, um, disrespect, uh, that's pretty major, and that's concerning, and that I would say really is kind of by and large not workable. So, hurt feelings are one thing. Um, you know, saying something out of anger, being if a person's accountable for their behavior, if they understand how they've crossed a line, if they're avidly working on, you know, correcting that imbalance, that's one thing. But if it's so far over the line that you're like, you've got to be kidding me, then yeah. But it's important that we have to be able to see, to acknowledge, to know, I guess, to know that we are worthy of dignity, that we have dignity, and that we have value, and that we're worthy of being treated with respect. Like, we have to inherently know that. So when people talk about uh, survivors of abuse and low self-esteem and kind of the need to raise self-esteem, oftentimes that's a big chunk of what they're talking about. Is so many survivors of abuse don't have that. They might not even be aware that they have low self-esteem because it's always how they've felt. It's like, oh, Angie was saying yesterday in our talk how she grew up feeling um, like not a real person, like Pinocchio. You're just little wooden boy kind of a thing. You're not a real person. And that's very common. And so that feeling of there's this emptiness, this profound emptiness inside where there's no validation, there's no acknowledgement, there's no awareness of the individual that a person is. um, it can be challenging to restore that, but it's so important for healing to restore that, because it's only then, once we see our worth, and we have to be aware of when we're sacrificing our dignity or when we are being disrespected. And this goes, I mean, all of this is connected, right? But stepping into our boundaries and knowing when our boundaries are being violated, once we get reconnected with that part of ourselves, then our relationships with other people begin to change. The way that we begin to interact with other people, the kind of behavior that we allow, or that we tolerate, begins to change for the better, because we see disrespect and nonsense and we see problematic behavior for what it is, and hopefully we're either able to address it and resolve it, or we're able to distance ourselves from it. Yeah. Alicia says, I think the low self-esteem started in my childhood. I wasn't allowed to be an individual. I think the trauma was always there. A recent narcissistic relationship just brought it all back to the surface. Yes. And um, I think that is the experience for the vast majority of people. I, again, my personal experience with this is I had a relationship when I was in high school with a guy who was completely psychotic. I mean, he was dangerous. He was, if he's not in jail for murder by now, I would be shocked. He was a really dangerous, scary dude. And I had vowed to myself I would never be in a relationship with anybody like that again. And thankfully, I wasn't. But then fast forward, 20 something years, and I've, dated people kind of throughout my life and had quite a few like really wonderful relationships. And so didn't recognize that that there was any imbalances within my own approach, boundary standards, deal breakers, communication. And then I got tangled up with Jack. And then I thought, okay, well, this is a fluke, right? And people kept telling me this, like, Dana, how could you have known? This was an absolute fluke. And that was even worse because I was like, well, that if it's a fluke, it could happen again. This is terrifying. I don't know how to keep myself safe. And then a couple years after that, I dated somebody who was also a pathological liar and the level of deceit and nonsense and craziness. And it was then that I realized, okay, this is more of a pattern. What am I missing here? And that's when I really began to kind of to dig deep and at least in my own life, it was the realization that I also had very low self-esteem that had been there from childhood. I had major abandonment issues. I had a lot of unresolved stuff that had happened. And the hook for me with these kinds of people, because I'd also had mainly one a significant friendship with this, she was a girl at the time who was absolutely horrible to me. Um, but the hook was they came across as very attentive and they really filled it made me feel significant and um you know it just kind of filled that bucket for me. And so I'd walked around for so long in my life feeling unimportant and unlovable. And then so when somebody was um showering me with attention or affection, I just ate it up. And I thought it was healthy. It didn't dawn on me that maybe this is manipulative or maybe this isn't sincere. And when I realized, oh my gosh, this is where that's coming, I was misreading a lot of situations um, because I was so starved out. I just didn't have a good working map, I guess, of what of the kind of that more, subtle forms of concerning behavior. Um, so then, like once you see it differently, it's that literally loses the appeal. The old me back then, if somebody were to tell me that they loved me within, pretty much right away, I was flattered. I took them at face value. It made me feel so good. It made me feel safe and secure. The new me today is if anybody comes on that fast, it's immediately I'm like, you don't know me. I'm well enough to love me. And that's not founded on anything. Like that's very immature of them. And those immature emotions tend to be very fleeting because there's no substance to them because they don't know you well enough to love you. It's just like I was talking to somebody the other day who was saying that their stepchild had moved in with them and they had never met this stepchild before. And right off the bat, the stepchild began calling her mom. And she was so flattered by that. And it's sort of like, ooh, yikes. No, that's not a good sign. Um, so it's easy to misread this kind of stuff. Oh boy. Ava says my ex toasted to our engagement on our first date. Yeah, that's a lot of that manipulative, charming kind of behavior. Along the same lines, I'm reading this book right now on different attachment disorders and um, kind of what I was just saying about this gal with the stepchild in this book, they were talking about even younger children that have experienced a lot of abuse, neglect, trauma, abandonment, especially, and in the foster system, and going into a new home, and then right away addressing these adults that they just met 10 minutes before, calling them mom and dad, and how these, um, that kind of thing tends to be, it's part of charm and it's part of manipulation. And it's not that the child has necessarily like malicious intent, um, but it's their way of kind of feeding the ego. It's weird how so much of this stuff occurs and we're not even consciously aware of it, but it's their way of endearing themselves to these adults to try to get these adults to meet their needs. But when you have kids that really struggle with a lot of attachment issues, um, they only they don't look to, especially uh, a lot of adults, they don't have the they struggle to bond, to have these healthy degrees of attachment. So they just view adults as, oh, you're the one that's gonna give me, food, clothing, shelter, candy, let me watch TV, you're gonna meet my needs, kind of a thing. So it's and it's known as the honeymoon period with foster kids. Oh, thank you, Sacred Light. Says Dana, I've followed you for years and never timed out to be on a live chat. It's great to see you. I've learned life-changing tools from you and I'm eternally grateful. Oh, well, I'm so glad I'm humbled and honored by that. And I'm really glad that you've gotten some positive things from this channel. I I tell you, I really feel the magic is in the community. It's when you've got, dozens, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of people who all have a piece of the puzzle, right? They all have like, oh, this is what worked for me, or this was my insight, or um, just some sort of uh, some sort of piece of the puzzle. It's amazing how combined that's where a lot of the answers are. Oh gosh, let's see. Montana saying, my daughter who just turned 9 told me on Zoom the other day that I'm not her mom. Oh, that must have really been a painful thing to hear. Have you explored with her kind of where that anger is coming from and why she's wanting to kind of push you away like that? Ava says, Dana, do you think any of your exes or narcissists in general could learn what narcissists do and then do the opposite? Like learn the playbook and do the opposite? Or do you think their pathology will always show through? It, I mean, all of them are different, and so they all have different degrees of intelligence and emotional intelligence and insight into what drives their behavior, as well as motivations for why they do what they do. I think absolutely some of them that are more malicious and intentional, that are seeking to, you know, manipulate, use other people for whatever purposes, that they absolutely can develop the skills necessary. I mean, Bill Cosby, right? Like the Bill Cosbys of the world, they can really learn. They can do a great job of acting the part, saying all the right things, doing all the right things. Um, you know, so in time, there will, I think, there will be cracks in their behavior. And I would say the vast majority of the time, too, um, they will start pushing boundaries. They will, um, the only way that we can really keep out problematic people out of our life is through our boundaries. That's it. We can make ourselves nuts trying to figure out, is this person a narcissist? Are they not? What are their intentions? Do they, did they mean to be abusive, or was this an accident? Did they, um, or were they just, were they just, is their whole family's, really dysfunctional? Is their abuse, the way their mistreatment of me, is it due to how they were raised, or is this going to be an ongoing pattern? Or we can spend all kinds of time trying to explore that, but at the end of the day, all of that's interesting, but it's not necessarily helpful. The only thing that's going to keep problematic people out of your life is going to be your boundaries. So, and sometimes these people fly under our radar, like in your situation where this person seems great. Then you, in like my situation, then you stumble across their double life and your jaw just hits the floor. I think that is definitely more the exception than the norm with problematic people. But all anybody can do in those situations is exactly what you and I did, which is to leave. That's it. And that can be very anxiety inducing, um, to think, oh gosh, well, what if I met somebody like that again? But, it's basically, it's just kind of going slow and um, address if there's concerning things that come up, either to kind of figure out, okay, is this something that's worth addressing, or is this something, kind of worth walking away from? Let's see, let me scroll up Montana. Mm. Sacred Light says, I could barely talk when I found you. I was in so much trauma from this covert psychopathic ex-husband. Oh, I'm so glad that you were able to get the clarity or the validation that you were needing at that, or the support even that you were needing at that time. I think that's so common, to just feel shell-shocked and just rattled beyond belief. Like, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to act. Like, it's trauma. Jennifer says, a few years ago, this female coworker tried to bond with me really fast, and it perked up my intuition. So I went over to her place a couple times for coffee, and we went to the mall once, but she just had so many red flags. I got out of there fast. Yeah. Well, good for you. You know, and I think that's such a big part of healing from all of this, is realizing, we don't need uh, to wait until these red flags are stacked until they're above our head. You know, it's kind of like Bonnie was saying, with this friend of hers, where she's like, gosh, this gal that I had in my life, she's full of drama and just chaos, and it's nonstop. And then asking ourselves, okay, what are you wanting in your life as far as relationships go? And is this what you're wanting? And if it's not, then that's okay. You're not obligated to to take people, and especially people that need major fixing. That's just not gonna work. It's too much of a um, an imbalance there when, you know, so. Oh, very cool. Sacred Light says, yeah, you taught me a life-changing tool to identify if you're being manipulated. You said if you find yourself feeling confused, introspective, and then justifying that behavior, odds are you're being manipulated. And and she said, learning that really changed my life. Yeah, that's a good, I'm glad. I'm glad first and foremost. Uh, and yeah, that's a good reminder for that for a lot of people, especially new people that are here. It's that perpetual confusion. You know, manipulation is only confusing to the person who's being manipulated. So when we're finding ourselves confused about somebody's behavior, and then the introspection, we're asking ourselves, is it me? Is it them? Does this make sense? Does this not make sense? I don't know. We're rehashing, we're pulling apart conversations, we're trying to make sense out of something that doesn't make sense. That's where that's coming from. And then we're justifying it. I must have heard wrong. I must have seen wrong. It must be because of my ex, my past, uh, whatever. We're excusing concerning behavior, and to be aware of when we're doing that. Because when because confusing behavior can surface, and there's difference when people are being authentic. They're going to have concerns from time to time about each other's behavior, but those differences can be fairly easily and quickly resolved. There's not a lot of diversion and blame and added confusion thrown into the mix to kind of knock the other person off the trail. There's that ability to be accountable for their actions, and to be team oriented, and to work towards a resolution, and all of that. Sharon, we'll take Sharon's question real quick, and then we'll go into our guided meditation because we're going to be over on time. And then just real quick, I will see you guys tomorrow night, book club, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're going to be discussing the book Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. Okay, so Sharon's question is, but what if the partner is schizophrenic? Should I stay because it's an illness? Well, if you have a partner who has mental illness is one thing, untreated mental illness is a totally different thing. So if they're not on medication, then it's like anything else. I mean, it's not reasonable for a person, I think, to stay in a relationship with somebody who refuses. It's tragic and it's heartbreaking, right? But if they're not willing to seek help, then you're not there is no real relationship at that point. Then you're basically staying there, acting the part of a caregiver, or um, you know or trying to kind of um, coexist, but there really isn't any true like relationship or partnership there. It's the same thing with any untreated mental illness, whether it's depression or anxiety. And this is coming from a person. I have struggled with major depression all my life, and to realize this is not fair to anybody that I'm with in a relationship. It's not a reasonable expectation that they carry this, that I put this expectation of I need, um, when I'm not doing well, that they're going to be there and they're going to ride out all of these lows with me. So because of that, because I know it's heavy lifting when you've got a person that's chronically depressed in your life, um, that I need to be responsible for my own emotional health, to go to the doctor, to take my medication, all of that. I realize that some people don't, with mental illness especially, don't have that level of insight. That's challenging and that's heartbreaking. But it's if you're not sharing the same reality, as that person, there really isn't any real relationship growth there. It's two people coexisting. So, and it can potentially be dangerous if you're not sharing the same reality with somebody and they're having delusions, they're having paranoia. This kind of thing can really escalate quickly. So it's something worth kind of thinking about. I absolutely understand uh, the kind of the pull to be there to support a person who's struggling with addiction or whatever it might be, mental illness or what have you. But I think getting keeping healthy boundaries at all times is always important, regardless of what's going on with the person. And Kenneth asked, would CPS allow kids to be abused if their abuser was schizophrenic? And the answer is no, they would not. So, um, okay. Okay. So, with that said, let's take some time and we'll do our end of the evening meditation, guided meditation, and then I will see you guys tomorrow. So please take a moment, find a comfortable spot, whether you're sitting down or laying down, and allowing your body to relax. Oh, I'm sorry. Kenneth says, he says, Dana, I was trying to make a point. It was an analogy. Okay, I missed that. That was that was a good analogy. Sometimes I don't catch. Uh, I don't catch things. So yeah, that was a good analogy. Um, oh, and Kenneth, by the way, real quick, sorry guys, I know we were just starting a meditation. I believe it was you. I'm pretty sure it was you had made a wonderful comment on my YouTube channel. I think it was last week sometime about uh oh, what was it? How I had mentioned suicide being a permanent solution to a temporary problem and how that could come across as very invalidating. And I'm pretty sure it was you. It was fantastic. The way that yes, it was you. I responded to you. The way that you worded that, I had never thought of it that way before. And you were absolutely right on with that. And I'm really going to make it a point to never say that again because I just had never thought of it that way. And you're spot on. So thank you so much for bringing that to my attention. I appreciate it. Okay. So with that said, we'll go back to I get I get sidetracked. Uh, go back to our guided meditation. So yes, please take a moment, find a comfortable spot, and whether you're sitting down or laying down, taking time to be present in your body and present in this moment. Allowing your muscles to relax. And feeling the heaviness of your body as you relax with each inhale and each exhale. Noticing the temperature of the air around you. Noticing if it's warm or if it's cool. Bringing your attention down to the tips of your fingers and the tips of your toes. Aware of kind of the full length and width of your body. Noticing the sensation of any fabric that might be against your skin. If it's soft or if it's kind of rough. If it's thin or if it's heavy. And turning your attention inward. And feeling your heartbeat. Bringing your attention into this inner world of your experience. Realizing that your body is comfortable. It's a comfortable place to be. That there is a lot that is good and right with you. And that you are your own safe space. You don't need for the world around you to necessarily be safe, although that would be wonderful. But that you are your own safe space, that you can keep yourself safe through your boundaries and standards and deal breakers. And you know what feels nourishing to you and what feels draining to you. And you know that you are worthy of being treated with dignity and respect. This is not something that you need to earn or somehow prove to another person that you're worthy of. These are basic human rights. This is the basics of mature adult behavior for other people, for everybody to be treated with a basic level of dignity and respect. Remember, there is a lot that is right about you. You are capable. You are courageous. You are brave. You are supportive. You are intelligent. You are a dedicated lifelong learner. You're interested in personal growth. I mean, those things right there, that's like 1% of the population, if even that. You're growth oriented. That's incredibly powerful. The questions that you guys come up with are just absolutely wonderful. The concepts and the way that you guys view these different concepts and the questions are just, I mean, beyond impressive. They're wonderful. And I hope that you can see yourself, you can see all of this about you, that you can truly let that soak in. All of the things that are good and right about you. When you're ready, come on back and open your eyes. And so, Crystal, thank you so much. That is something I do not say often enough. She says, much thanks to all the moderators here. Yes. Thank you guys so much, Missouri Cowboy, Bonnie, Jack. I'm trying to think who else was on. You guys, your work here is so appreciated, and your time and um, all of it is just beyond appreciated. So thank you so much for everything that you do. And we will see you guys hopefully tomorrow. Book club, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll be discussing the book Man's Search for Meaning. So I'll be curious to hear what you guys have to say about it. And we'll see you tomorrow. As always, lots of love to you guys. You are not alone. You are not crazy, and you really can move forward and heal from this. So have a wonderful night. Thank you, Sacred Light. You too. Take care, everybody. Okay. Good night.